The content of this channel is for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell notification button. And please, feel free to share the video. Thank you. What's good, everybody? I'm GG, and tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. It's the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up and no chases. Before I get things started, I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible. I want to give a shout out to all you haters out there. I hope y'all passing a good afternoon. When you come in, could you please make sure to hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell notification button so you can stay abreast of what's going on here on the Green Gorilla channel. And at this time, I'd like to show some appreciation to all of the members of the Green Gorilla channel by shouting them out. So, big up to Mark Hope, Pulpit 28, Lee Ways, No Sleep, Broken Blade, Mr. King, Black Men Being Brutally Honest, Larry R., Seth's Son, and Michael Ross. Big up to you, gentlemen. Big up to Devon Loveridge, Afro Truth TV, Show Me, Spain Man, Ben Cannon Kenton, Seventh Coast Dojo, Apex Prowler, Anthony Davis, I'm Just Jules, Blacksword 404, and An Honest Look. Big up to you, gentlemen. Big up to Sherlin Roll, Ricky Dawson, Stefan, Julius Ferguson, Lord Hamal, True 7360, Mr. Me Too, Call for President, Superman's Cape, Gold Professor, and AKs and Curtains. Big up to you guys. Shout out to H-Town, Roguish the Buildmonger, BD Main, Adrian Thomas, Electrician 480, Binga, Cutting Up with the Jones, Zanko, D. Scott, Path Guy, and Pete Rock 496. Big up to you, gentlemen. Big up to Aaron Peters, Barnolis, Dardar, Vincent Lindsay, Beautiful Trauma, Quiz the Poet, Black Wizard 80OS, Jazz Tech, Shadow Observer, Sugar T, and Artisan MC. Big up. Big up to Troy Warren, Mrs. KP Bailey, Alan Wiley, The Face, Life of Commerce, Dreamlit, A. Wilson's Ghost, Timothy Blewett, Jeffrey Speed, and Marvin Battle Jr. Big up to you all. Big up to Adam, BGS Ibmore, Ignatz Mouse, Brian Peaks, Papa Dida, Scott Haywood, Black Uru, Dr. Tree, Leroy Honeycutt, 77 Base X, and Brian McMurray. Big up. Big up to Cameron S., Charles Rogers, Rick Ross, Sandra Jean, Charles Gilmore, Greg Berry Little, Mr. Valentino, Cameron 87, Dr. Rock, Mark Swift, Odd Collar, Donna Watts, Coach Hotep, Old Soul Chief, Mr. Blue Collar, TD Hip Hop Media, Drew Main, Mr. Heat, Sir Anthony, MLR, Universal 178, Rasheed Barnes, and Aaron Smith. Big up. Big up to DH, Red Pill Revelator, Aaron Infinite, Dr. Tiasan Johnson, Kalonja Kala, Hostile Adept, and W. Pierre 1. Big up to you, gentlemen. And can't forget Force Windu, David Carroll, and Kevin Samuels. Big up to y'all. Shout out also to Christopher Flowers, Christopher Burton, Prince D. Martini, Daxby, Lamar, J. Live, Rashawn Phillips Sorrells, Keith Bass, Nick, Malcolm Smith, Rock One, Judah Harinda, Albert C., Dr. Ben Vincent, J. Cleveland Green, Charles Fontenot. That's too long, bro. Like, why is it doing that, man? I apologize for that, man. Tyrone Hampton, Darnell Smith, Excalibur, Pursuer Prisoner, Taz, Dragon 59, Jay Bailey, Mr. Michi, Momal, and the Sangwa. Big up to you, gentlemen, man. Thank you. Appreciate your help and your support and helping me to keep the Green Gorilla channel going. Big up. And if you're wondering how you can support the Green Gorilla channel on an ongoing basis, man, through a YouTube membership, here's how you do it, and we'll be back with what's going on. What's good, everybody? I'm the G with a PhD, and you're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel, the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up, no chaser. Today, I want to introduce you to my new membership program that consists of 5 levels where you can invest in the Green Gorilla channel on a monthly basis and receive level-specific perks. Memberships are special because they improve the quality of the content of the channel and will help me to be able to keep the channel going. Now, to participate in the Green Gorilla channel membership program, all you have to do is hit the join button, which is located right next to the subscribe button on my channel page. Now, for all of my subscribers who decide not to participate in my membership program, nothing will change. The content will keep coming the way it always has. Thanks for watching, and be careful out here, people. Bless. What's cracking, everybody? I'm GG. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. It's the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up with no chasers, man. Today, I had to do it, man, because basically I'm getting tired of a whole bunch of rigmarole going on in the chat, man. So, I figure if I put the filter on the chat to the point where only people who are subscribers comment, it'll keep that bullshit down. So today we on some fuck nigga free shit. If you want to be into some fuck nigga shit, you can go ahead and put it up there with a super chat. So you got to pay for fuck nigga shit today. You know what I'm talking about? So if you don't like it, well, it's going to be like that for a quick little minute, because I ain't got time to be arguing back and forth with niggas over some stupid shit. You know what I'm saying? So it is what it is. But I brought a friend along today. What's up, Sand Dog? How you doing, bro?
What's going on, team? Nothing much, man. I'm just up here chilling, man. Just crumbling herb, man, and, letting this perm set in.
That boy said he doing everything hood as fuck, man. He crumbling the herb and letting the perm set in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man. Matter of fact, I'm about to buy a Crown Victoria, man. So when I come back to the States, I could just drive slowly behind you and scare the shit out of you.
Shit, man. We fucking rolling in them lax and priests over here. You feel me? You know about them lax, them priests, boy. Them old school priests that them police used to roll in. You feel me? Them Victoria's too new school for me, but them old school priests.
All right, what you got, diamonds up in that wood?
No, man. I got that wood grain grip.
White walls.
I got the cassette. No, actually, I got the 8-track tape still up in that joint. It's factory. Factory, baby. No, why you bullshitting, you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, man, I remember before them power locks, man, you know what I'm saying? You used to have to pull up them knobs, you feel me?
Correct.
You had to pull up them knobs, man. You had to roll that crank to get that window up, boy. And in the wintertime, you know what I'm saying? It was a difficult task sometimes, you feel me?
Yeah.
You better ask somebody, bro. Shout out to Show Me, man. Appreciate the donation, sir, man. Got to give him a shout out for that, man. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that, man. It's all love, bro. But speaking of love, man, today you came to me with a concept, that's kind of deviating from the path of what we've been having discussions about. But you said, I want to do a show about justice, freedom, and love. And, I don't know what order you want to have a discussion about those things. But explain the concept, man, the Dolly shot and how it relates to justice, freedom, and love, bro.
Okay, man. So, in film, the Dolly shot is, it's when the camera moves toward or away from the subject you're shooting, right? So instead of utilizing the zoom to get closer, the camera is physically moving relative to the subject, right? And so the reason why I brought that up is because, and what we've discussed in the manosphere in regards to freedom, justice, the things that people are concerned about, what's happening in Black America, the direction of the United States and everything itself. And what happens is that, in the most part, is that one of the reasons why there's a lot of struggle with America itself is down to Black America, is that a lot of us have different ideas or different perspectives or levels of understanding or depth perceptions when it comes to the ideas of justice, freedom, and love. And so I think that a lot of us, and even at a time, myself included, were missing the language to articulate the points that we would need to actually to be able to establish an agenda, right? So if you were to understand, okay, what is justice? What are the concepts of justice that exist? And do they really fit with what your overall goal is? And then also the same thing again with, along with freedom, right? Because there are those of us who debate, the many aspects of freedom in terms of how you're going to move forward to either, fix Black America or the country. And then, in the last couple of days, to be honest with you, this has been inspired by your last two shows when you were talking about emotions and, the infantilization, of women in society. And so now, we will have to understand the different forms of love, right? Because at the end of the day, right, not all love is romantic. And so I think one of the things that kind of hurts Western society is that romantic love is like the most fickle form of the other forms of love that exist. It's not something that lasts forever, and it's not something that you can build the next 30, 40, or 50 years of your life on. So it's about kind of taking these concepts, having a quick discussion and putting these things into perspective where you could develop an agenda that's actually healthy to some extent. Because what you have to remember is that in our society, because no one is more American than African Americans, right? And our society, what happens is there's like the Rome of old, our culture is hedonistic, right? In general. So nobody wants to be old, right? Everybody wants to be young forever, right? If, if, we're all broke, but if the iPhone 16 came out tomorrow, somehow there's lines wrapped around the Virgin Megastore, right? And so, we're talking about what these different concepts are to kind of give ourselves new perspectives internally and externally, maybe God willing, that will allow us to make different types.
But Sandal, what about the hoes? What about the
Well,
bitches? I
well,
can't have a conversation without these bitches.
well, I will tell you this, right? Again, well, they'll come up in love, but what Jesus, peace be upon him, said, seek first the kingdom of heaven and all these things will be added unto you. So if you pursue your purpose in a disciplined manner, you won't even have to look for it. It'll come to you. Right. So at the end of the day, man, you go out there and you live a life of discipline, you keep yourself physically fit and you're on your purpose and everything else, though that type of thing, like women and all that stuff, that'll come. So it's not necessarily something that you need to, go out there and get in your Scooby-Doo mystery machine, right? And go out there and find.
Right. So hold on. Let me before you say anything else, I want to give a shout out to Ben Cannon Kitten. Shout out to him. Appreciate you. He says learning to learn. Respect to Ben Cannon Kitten. You know what I'm saying? So today the format is a little different in terms of the chat. I'm just tired of going back and forth, getting into some low vibrational bullshit with various sucker niggas, if to borrow a term from Jay Prince. niggas on sucker shit, coming into the live, man, disrupting the flow. So today we're gonna keep the flow only inside with family and at least the conversation at any rate. So if you want to actually, communicate and have a discussion, then you got to already be a part of the family. You know what I'm saying? So it is what it is. You know what I mean? But commence saying, dog.
Yeah. So, again, so basically what we're going to do today is we're going to open up like with the concept of justice, right? And so, okay, so, we, as, they would say no justice, no peace, right? And so justice is a set of universally accepted norms and values that determines what is right or wrong, right? The concept of moral, fair, and impartial treatment to all persons in accordance with the law is called justice, right? So now, again, when you get back to our experience in Africa, right? The Africans themselves are not, at least on a continental level, or maybe even in a landmass area, they're not unified by a particular value system, be it religion, philosophy, or anything else, right? So this is one of the things that would allow the African continent to somewhat be dashed to bits because there isn't a unified value system. If you go into Islamic history, right, you know, the Arabs themselves were generally weak, right? They were ran over by the Byzantines, Romans, and Persians. But once they were able to unify under Islam, right, surprisingly so, they would end up with major victories over these other groups of people because they now have one common value system, one goal, you know what I'm saying, and one ideology. And so this is now something that has now kind of rocked America, right? Because now when you look at, okay, at first it was kind of like, okay, freeing people from slavery, you know, the material conditions of blacks and indigenous Americans. And then once you kind of have what America would call the civil rights movement, right, that would get kind of sidestepped by intersectionalism. Now you kind of end up in this place where there's no longer a uniformed code of justice because these new kind of philosophies or ideologies have entered the space, right? So it's like, as you mentioned before, it's no longer about justice in the sense of dealing with the material condition of people, but it becomes justice in a sense of some type of other form that that doesn't make sense to a lot of people, because again, to a lot of people, you know, when you're looking at justice, you're talking about universal ideas that we all agree upon. So for example, when it comes to racism, that's why there's such a big debate in the United States. Okay, the cops aren't beating you up, you're not getting clubbed over the head, again, allegedly, right, to many. So, you know, justice has been served, right? I live in Montana, I feel indifferent about black people, or I feel indifferent about Mexicans or any groups of people, but justice has been served. And so the thing about it is that without understanding the different types of justice, or what justice is in its entirety, I think this is where we all end up at a loss.
Oh, well, you know, hey, man, you in my domain right now, you know, when you start to talk about justice, various conceptions of it, ideas about it throughout time, whether it be ancient concepts or philosophies pertaining to justice, whether it be Oriental or Asian versus Western or European or African versus, you know, Native American, you know, justice, you know, it rears its head, and it's different for different people in different societies and throughout time. So there's no uniformity in the concept of justice itself. However, you know, people who often make claims related to justice do so in such a way as to, you know, be making a claim that has universal, justification. I mean, which is kind of tautological and circular for me to say it that way. But I mean, people who tend to make a claim about justice think that they're appealing to something universal. Okay, so, but I mean, so tell us, you know, here's the funny thing about it though, right? In today's culture, as far as I'm concerned, it's like, you know, instead of conversations being had, people are like retreating to, you know, their tribes. And in terms of like being tolerant and showing restraint, that's not really happening today. You know, people are like we were talking about this before we even got on the air. People are entrenching and doubling down on their own ideology and, you know, their own frame of reference, and they don't even want to engage the other or have a conversation to see where the other person is coming from. They just want to shout you down or ridicule you or hurl some kind of insult, right? As opposed to trying to understand your point of view and where it is you're coming from. But like today, politics, issues related to ethics, morality, and so on and so forth, man, it just seems like it's more like religious zealotry than it is about like scientific understanding. But go ahead, man, go commence.
Correct. So like I said, so again, like how we talked, well, remember you and I talked about the second great awakening in the United States. And so for a lot of people, right, who would think that, okay, religion is just a waste of time and it's useless. And, you know, white people wanted to brainwash us. what you have to remember is that even in Europe itself, the people were kept illiterate. They, again, the priests would come to them and tell them what was in the Bible. And at that time, the people in Europe themselves couldn't even read it for themselves to understand or comprehend, right? Which is a crime against humanity in itself. Because remember, right? So justice can also is defined as the guiding principle and moral or legal compass to determine the legitimacy and validity of any law in disputes, right? It is the ultimate goal of law. It is believed that law without justice is a wound without cure. So one of the concerns about people in Europe or slaves in America reading the Bible was what? That they would get crazy ideas about freedom and equality, because this is what the Bible teaches. And so what would end up happening is that the people who were slave holders would eventually get influence over the Presbyterians and other Protestants that were in America. And this is where they would start preaching about how everything is better in the hereafter, right? But the actual message of Protestant Christianity in the United States was anti-slavery. And this will be a problem, right? Because so when people get into the argument of, was America built on slavery, on racism? And my argument is, materially, yes, but philosophically or spiritually, no, right? Because at the end of the day, it was America's very value system on paper that would help to bring about an end to slavery, or at least some relief from the racial prejudice or the principalities that will be born out of the legacy of slavery, some relief, and that would be provided through those religious values, right? That we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal with certain unalienable rights from their creator. So if you remove that, so for all the guys who are above religion, if you remove that, how is slavery morally wrong? How is Jim Crow morally wrong? How do you get a Martin Luther King or a Malcolm X, right?
So I get. So let me just put it this way. Yes. Religion is a double-edged sword, man. I mean, yes. on one side of the blade, or one surface area, of the sword can be utilized in service of what's right, and on the other hand, it can serve to bring about pain and injustice. Okay, so I mean, like for example, as Emperor Constantine made Christianity the official religion of Rome, he wasn't thinking about making life better for people. He was thinking about, how can I adopt an ideology, which I see many people in my empire adopting unilaterally by themselves. How can I utilize this cult, this new mystery cult, in order to service my own political ambitions? Okay, so that's what he did. Okay, and you can say whether it's right or wrong, or whether God moves in mysterious ways, however you want to perceive it. Okay, but the reality is, religion could be used either for good or for evil. Okay, also, one of the things I like to alert people to is, the seeds of democracy were born out of Protestantism. I don't know if people understand that. Like everybody values democracy and, the ability to have equal input and so on and so forth in decision-making processes. But like, one could argue, if it wasn't for Protestantism, you wouldn't have modern conceptions of freedom and liberty in the same manner that you do now. And it is predicated upon Christian theology. I'll say that much. But, Martin Luther, man, putting this, his protestations of the injustices enacted by the clergy at the time. I mean, it was some incendiary shit. some unheard of shit. Like, oh, you're gonna challenge God's authority or his ambassadors on earth? How dare you? I mean, but he's like, look, first of all, you're teaching or you're giving mass in a language that the people don't understand. It's inaccessible. We can't even read it because most people can't read. So, I mean, mostly people would go and observe mass that was incomprehensible to them. The only thing that they could really actually relate to were images and songs and shit like that they might have learned, but they didn't even understand the words. Okay, so I mean, eventually, Protestantism would give birth to, the Bible eventually being printed in English as opposed to Latin, and eventually, giving rise to the idea of publicity or a norm of publicity, meaning that you don't keep things hidden or concealed, but you reveal the truth about the word. Because, I mean, one could argue if you're the only person who has access to liturgy, which is supposed to be, your way to heaven, and you're the only person who can, reveal it to, a flock of persons, then that's kind of like, it's kind of hoarding salvation, so to speak. So the idea was to make it public. Let everyone gain access to it so that they can, interpret it and understand it and comprehend it on their own terms. But, keep speaking, bro. And shout out to Brotherly Love 215, man. He renewed his membership. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
But go ahead, bro.
Correct. And so again, but remember, these debates on justice isn't just within religion itself. So now, for example, so you're talking about, okay, is America a racist nation or not? Or in a broader concept of justice? Because again, if you're looking at what Plato said, right? So just in short, right? Plato is looking at justice as quality of the soul, right? And your ability to resist pleasure, right? And embrace discipline for the benefit of all, right? So now if you have what America has said on paper, right, against what Plato was saying, then you could, or at least from what Sandog is attempting to identify now, is that where you would get slavery and genocide and all of these other things would be acts of hedonism, acts of lust, right? In order for material benefit or to indulge in all the pleasures, right? So this will be the opposite of what Plato considers justice, right? So it will be a lack of discipline in America to deliver what has been put on paper, right? From the very beginning, whether you are an indentured servant, a soon-to-be slave, or somebody that is indigenous to the United States of America. And so in order to deliver justice, one has to be disciplined, right? You're looking at the philosopher king in the sense of somebody who kind of sees the big picture and understands that he's a part of the whole, and he makes decisions, right? He makes decisions for the whole, right? And so now, and then when you get to Plato's teacher, Socrates himself, Socrates is saying that justice is about helping man, but not bringing harm to anyone, right? And then, and I always ruin his name, right? Thrasymachus, right? And so the Thrasymachus, right, will come in a sense, right, and kind of Malcolm X it and be like, fam, that makes no sense, right? How do you, your enemies are out to get you. So how do you deliver justice without having to harm your enemies? Right?
Yeah. So, I mean, to make a long story long, like, as it pertains to justice, because we can go through the various philosophers and various eras and the different conceptions of justice, but like at the end of the day, like black people don't really, above and beyond contemporary ideas about identity politics and slavery and civil rights, Negroes, I mean, maybe it's distributive justice to a certain degree in terms of their, own earnings and their own ability to continue to make money or, to maintain it. And to protect it from others and the government. Like black people talk about justice in a lot of different ways. There's no cohesive concept of justice amongst black people in contemporary American culture. So, like, where are we going with this?
Correct.
I'm just challenging you. Like, where are we going with this?
Yeah, but even in America as a whole. But my point is to identify just that. right? So at a particular time in the country, right, one could argue that Protestant values is what held the country together, or what or was once a universal moral bond around the country, and then you'll reach a stage in American history where that bond breaks, and now it's dashed into bits, right? And so, to make a long story short, when you look at the nation, or when you look at African Americans themselves, and that's why I was telling you, like, my kind of reservation, or with the word coon or sellout, or this, because there isn't a universal value system, whether it's America as a whole or within what you want to call Black America itself, that we all live by and agree upon. So if it doesn't exist, what are you selling out? What are you turning your back on?
The one thing I can say is this, like, people aren't clear about what justice is, and they really don't like to have conversations about it. I'll say that. I will say this. Like, a lot of, like, what goes on in the Black manosphere is ideas about what justice is without really actually having a meta conversation about justice by itself. And because, on average, I can't say that most people in the Black manosphere are uneducated. I won't go out there and say that, but because there are a lot of educated men out here in this space, college educated men, but like, most people haven't had a formal introduction to theorizing about justice like you would if you went to college. You know what I'm saying? It just doesn't happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know about justice related to Plato, Aristotle, St. Augustine, St. Thomas Aquinas, Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, Rousseau, and all them, and contemporarily people like Robert Nozick, John Rawls, and deliberative democratic theorists and shit like this. I understand the conversation, all right, but the average individual just doesn't really have any frame of reference of what he's talking about. He just knows what he thinks he knows, or doubles down on what his opinion is, as opposed to trying to utilize some overarching theory about justice to make sense about what it is he's arguing for. You know what I'm saying? So, but I do think that men could profit in this space from having a long and a protracted understanding of different concepts of justice. But, but that shit wouldn't be talking about these bitches, man. Because, some of these guys just like, man, fuck all this shit, nigga. What's about these bitches, man? Fuck what y'all talking about. They ain't talking about the hoes right now and how treacherous these bitches are. Fuck these niggas, man. They talking about some old weird space shit. I'm keeping it real. Like, we talked about this. Like, you got guys who come into the space, they're on some red pill rage shit. The only thing they can really understand and comprehend and key into is anger and frustration and venting and vitriol towards these hoes. Which I don't have a problem with. Look, I think that there's a time and a place for that. But I also think that any man who continuously focuses on these chicks, man, and the shit that they do and how they doing the shit that they doing, it's like, damn, dog, that's the only thing you own, bro?
Well, yeah, but that's because they probably don't want a solution to the problem. They enjoy the pain. They enjoy the, they may enjoy that suffering, right? So,
bruh, like, man, I was chatting with Dr. Neil and Tia San. We got little chat groups and shit where we communicate with each other periodically throughout the day and shit like that. But we were talking about how Black men really actually subscribe to masochism, bro, in a lot of ways. You know what I'm saying? Like, because a lot of Black men feel duty bound to take on the pain of others. So like, how empaths are in fantasy movies where like they can absorb the pain and then, diffuse it into the universe or some shit like that. A lot of Black men feel like they're empaths and they can perform that kind of duty and that kind of work.
Green Mile.
Yeah, let me take it back, boss. That's a perfect example. That is a perfect example. I'm taking it back. I can take it back. Let me lay hands on you. Right? So, you know, or really, a lot of black men feel that it's their duty to lay hands on the community and to absolve everyone from every, you know, pathology that exists out there, right? And to some degree, I mean, it's everybody's duty to uphold the dictates and the demands of justice. I do agree with that, okay? But then let's define what the terms of justice are. That's why I was reading that text. I've been reading this text, Injustice, Dissent, and Reform. Okay, Dark Ghettos by Tommy Shelby. In it, at least there's one contemporary delineation or definition of what justice is. Various interpretations about a specific kind of idea called liberal egalitarianism. And, you know, I'm not going to get into the intricacies of that here, but I mean, cats don't have a sophisticated understanding or a platform to work from or an outline to utilize before they just start having concepts being expressed amongst themselves. It's not like they've, you know, thought about a systematic philosophy of anything. It's just like motherfuckers just out there just playing the game. You understand what I'm saying? But T. Lee says he disagrees. I mean, everybody's here a subscriber or has been one for at least 5 days. Okay, so there's nobody here today in the chat that's just on some bullshit. So how do you respond to that? And please tell us, T. Leaves, too, in what manner or in what respect do you disagree? But go ahead, Sandog.
Okay. So, you know, and so again, so kind of, you know, getting, like I said, you know, getting back into justice. So one of the things, right? So even when you're addressing grievances in America, right? So when you're talking about equality, so what is your goal? What is your goal in this equality, right? And so now you have to understand first and foremost what it is to even be a citizen, right? And what are the duties and privileges that come that should come with being a citizen, right? And so, you know, when you're talking about what? So the actions and duties of citizens are obeying the law, right? Which obviously, you know, Black people have done in mass, right? Because again, 44 million dissatisfied people, right, who turn hot. That's enough to ruin. That's enough to ruin, you know, a happy place, right? So obviously, these people are obeying the law, right? And then attend school. And so now, and this is what I'm saying, so you're now denied the rights, right, of citizenship, right? Because you're not able to read, right? You have underfunded and desegregated schools. So you can't obtain, you know, what a lot of people will call a decent or functional education, right? You know, paying taxes with what money or what revenue. And then the sad part is you're locked out of capitalism. You're locked out of the bonds and the booty that you would get from the system, but you're still now serving in much of a sense the duties of a citizen, right? You're obeying the law. You're attending the school, good, bad, or indifferent. You're paying taxes. You're serving in the armed forces. And sadder, most unfortunately, you're appearing in court, but you're not sitting in the damn jury, right? So, you know, and so one of the things that I would advise, you know, again, African Americans or Americans in general to do is to understand what are the duties and privileges of being a citizen, and then identify the fact that if I'm holding up what I'm supposed to be doing on my end, then government, what is it that you're doing for me?
I get you. But okay, so I want to respond to, today I have no issue with responding because I think everything will be respectable because everybody who leaves comments is going to be, you know, a member of my subscriber list for over 20 days. You know what I'm saying?
But for this guy here, Kenton, I can't pronounce his first name, right? So it says justice was not defined by understanding. Well, no, these are 3 different conversations, right? So again, when I told you the Dolly shot, right? So a lot of people, these are concepts that a lot of people do not have a clear idea on, or don't even understand what their technical meanings are or how they should be applied. So when I talk about justice, freedom, and love, these are actually three different conversations, right? Because these are some of the main conversations that take place in this manosphere or this space. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to show these are three separate conversations with a little bit more of the language behind what these concepts are and the different categories of said concepts that we could use perhaps in the future to form the language of the agenda that we actually desire.
Yeah, he's trying to create some sort of philosophical framework about what justice actually is. So when you make reference to what's right or wrong or what's fair or unfair, as it pertains to your position in whatever culture you live in, that you have some sort of coherent argument to make predicated upon some pre-established principles. You're not just out there arguing ad hoc. You know, yeah. I mean, I would assume that that's exactly what it is you're trying to articulate here, right?
Yes.
So it's like, okay, you know, instead of just having a rambling conversation about like particular things that you find to be fair or unfair, just or unjust, you got a concept you can work with whereby you're able to interpret those various things and whether or not certain actions or certain policies or, you know, whether they be political policies, economic policies, or some social policy, whether or not they cohere with your principle of justice that you've defined, that you think that you agree, you know, but in abstract, right? So
correct.
That's what I'm assuming you're getting at, right?
Yeah.
You know, but okay. So the funny thing is, like I said before, and I think I will get into it because I think it'll actually serve to you know, guide the discussion at least to a minimal degree. So I've been reading this book again, and the book is called, you know, Dark Ghettos, Injustice, Dissent, and Reform. Now he utilizes a philosopher, Tommy Shelby does, the author of this book. He utilizes a philosopher by the name of John Rawls, okay? And he extrapolates the principles from Rawls, who is a liberal egalitarian, right? And he uses it to put forth this principle of justice, namely that society is based on reciprocity, okay? Now, reciprocity is a really simple thing, man. You scratch my back, I scratch your back. That's what a social arrangement is. I mean, at its core, right? So you share cooperation over time, and as you do so, if it's to be fair or just, there has to be an equal distribution of benefits and burdens, right? And everybody has to bear the load. It's not like some people can just sit back and be like, okay, you remember the movie Animal Farm?
Yes.
Or you know, like the story, not the movie, but the story.
Yeah, George Orwell, yeah.
And they have like an animated like video of it. I remember watching it when I was in grade school, man. It's that old, okay? And Boxer is a horse, and he does most of the work on the farm, right? He's like the workhorse, like quite literally, right? And but then you have the pigs, and they just kind of, you know, eventually they become like the dictators of what's going on the farm under some, you know, socialist ideal. But it's all about equality and liberty and sharing duties and burdens and benefits in the beginning. But then what ends up happening is they just accumulate goods for themselves, right? And they do what's best only for their own individual selves. And so, you know, Rawls and Tommy Shelby's going to say, well, that's not a fair arrangement. Like if society becomes such that reciprocity as a norm is not pervasive within it, then you know something's awry with the basic structure of society, right? And social cooperation is going to break down, right? Because you're going to get malcontent. If you got a group or a class of persons who are uber wealthy, now I don't have a problem with like inequality, but like the kind of inequality that exists in a culture like this, it's just, you're asking at some point for rebellion to occur.
Yeah.
I mean, you might be able to put it down or squash it militarily, but you're not going to get rid of, you're not going to extinguish or expunge the malcontent. Do you get what I'm saying?
Exactly. Correct.
So I mean, so this is one idea about justice that you can look at and then use as a standard whereby you can develop others that compete with it, or counter, arguments, or counterclaims against that notion of justice. But at least you got one frame of reference. That's why I was reading the book. I'm like, okay, let's get into some sort of systematic understanding about ghetto-related issues instead of just having, bullshit conversations about Pookie and Ray Ray and Strags and bitches and shit like that. Like, it's cool to a certain extent, but I mean, at some point, you gotta develop a more sophisticated conversation than just having, just loose conversations about these bitches ain't shit. But that's just my opinion, you know what I mean? But that's why BGS, brought people like me here, I guess, and kind of help promote like what I was doing, because I'm gonna try to give you some measured, and abstract outlining of philosophical concepts that you could use and apply to, various other, instantiations of what you need to draw on in order to explain whether it's fair or unfair, just or unjust, right or wrong, moral or immoral, whatever the case may be. But go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Bro.
And so, like I said, and just to break it down, right, when we talked about this, so, when you talk about the kinds of justice, right, so again, understanding what are the duties and privileges of being a citizen, and, we could go into that conversation at another time, right, and so, your first one.
I think we should, I think to some degree we had to, like, the reason why is, because the last time I was on the mic, right, I had some cat come in, he just got ignorant as shit. And, he kind of was like trying to bite my chops about how I'm like saying the same shit as feminists are saying by just telling the truth. You know what I mean? Like, and one thing you got to know about me is, bro, like, I don't give a damn about your relationship or how mad you are with these hoes or whatever the case may be. Like, personally, I understand. I'm pissed off too. Like some of the shit that I've been through, like, enrages me as well. But, like, I got to be reflective. I got to be contemplative and figure out, like, well, how do I combat this in a language that people can actually understand, right? That appeals to justice and it appeals to principles of ethics or morality that they can understand, as opposed to me just, emoting about it. And I don't have a problem emoting about it, but I have to be able to appeal to some concept of justice in order to say this is not right. You get what I'm saying? So Correct. One of the things I say is, if it's the case that men and women are equal, then shouldn't they have the same benefits and burdens? Or is it the case that, women have a special kind of class in society such that they have the same benefits as everybody else, but they don't have the same burdens as everybody else? And if that's actually, the social arrangement and how women want it and how men think that it ought to be, well, then how can that persist and be perceived as actually just? Like I just don't see how it can be fair, right? And one of the things, what this guy brought up was that, like, women are just cowards. They have no ability in the time of war to exhibit or display courageousness. Like, what do you think about that, dog? I mean, like, sometimes you got to be able to deviate from the path. I know you got a script, but what you think about that, bro?
Well, it's nonsensical, man. Look, it's like you've heard me say this. Remember the last time I was on the show, right? It doesn't exist in the Army anymore, but the old divisional cavalry is combined arms warfare, right? So if I was in a tank unit, I might fight with some tanks or for some infantry guys. But when you're in the cavalry, right? When I was a scout platoon leader, I had dismounted guys. I had a tank platoon supporting me, mortars, artillery, scout aviation, attack aviation, chemical scouts, adjacent coordination with the other units, long range reconnaissance and everything else. And guess what? There was a whole bunch of ladies out there. Right. And so my argument would be, no matter how good or bad those female soldiers are, right, they are more courageous than the majority of the male population in the United States, because as of now, less than 1% of Americans are in the military or serve, right? And so if you out there slinging and banging, right, in the name of freedom and righteousness and all of that, hey, it's a check mark in my book, because remember, in order to be a soldier of any sort or a Marine of any sort, first and foremost, let's say in terms of basic masculinity, you have to be physically fit, right? And what I told you, only 23% and change of American men actually work out, right? And so they're saying now in America, you have people who can't even pass the physical fitness test. And here's the funny part: to pass an Army physical fitness test, at least when I was in, the bare minimum, you had to do 42 push-ups, 52 sit-ups, and pretty much what? Run 2 miles before
15
16
minutes.
yeah,
That shit.
before
That shit,
15
man.
or 16 minutes elapsed. And so the fact that you're now starting to have difficulty finding young men or men in general that can do that, we have a real problem. So the women that are anywhere in the Department of Defense or physically involved in the defense of this country, they have already surpassed a significant number of the male population in physical prowess and courage.
And that's crazy to me, dog. Like, I mean, look, I don't consider myself to be the most physically fit man in the world, okay? By any stretch of the imagination. But I'm 51 years old. I know for a fact I can get up on a pull-up bar and knock out at least about 14, 15 of them motherfuckers. Okay?
Yeah.
I know I can do. You saw me playing around with the 45s, man, curling them motherfuckers. You know what I'm saying? So, but bro, Americans are lazy, bro. Americans are lazy, bro. And unfortunately, black men are lazy as fuck too when it comes to physical fitness.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the only motherfuckers really for real in shape are athletes or motherfuckers in jail, dog. God damn, bro.
Correct.
Oh man, look.
Yeah.
The vast majority of guys in jail are in shape.
Yeah. Because I would tell a lot of guys, right? So if you're here from red pill rage and all of that stuff, man, and everything else, I'll be very honest with you, man. If you hit the gym and get in shape, man, and get yourself backs, abs, six packs, and everything else, and take a few pictures on Instagram, trust me, your DMs will be flooded. Why? Because you are now in a small percentage of men that's in physical shape. So if you want your DMs to be flooded, right, again, and all you want to do is knock boots and everything else, man, look, all you got to do is sacrifice a year to 18 months of your life, you'll say in that gym, and it'll come flooded.
But here's the problem with that approach, though, as far as I'm concerned, no saying, dog. I get it,
Yeah.
but here's my deal with that, right? My thing is, man, you should strive to do that for yourself, not for these chicks, but for your own health.
Yeah,
that's
what I'm saying. But if I'm talking about the fact that that's what they're on. But that's what I'm trying to tell you, right? So
right.
So Sandog, again, I wasn't like destitute or anything, right? Sandog joined of his own volition. As a matter of fact, that was my path into the fraternity, right? So I showed up in ROTC because I wanted to stay in shape, right, for the next football season. And the head of the ROTC program, rest in peace in Omega chapter, right? At the time, Lieutenant Colonel, he liked me, right? For some reason he loved him some Sandog, and he got me into that ROTC program. I joined something called Ranger Challenge, and Ranger Challenge in ROTC, you are pretty much the military games team of that university, and that and that team was loaded with the bras, right? And so between him and the fact that, you know, before I got into the fraternity, before I even knew what it was, all of my friends, right, be it the football team, ROTC, and engineering students, right? Because that, at least on my campus, that's where you found the majority of them, right? So they were either all packed together somewhere in STEM, the football team, ROTC, or a combination of them all. And that's how I would ultimately, you know, end up in the fraternity, because that's where all my friends were anyway from the first place, right? And so, you know, again, so I'm just saying it's different. But for a lot of guys, man, if that's your aim, right? If that's your aim, whatever it takes, because like you said, right, that's what they do, right? They want to come and they want to talk about these ladies. And so I'm just telling you, man, if you get yourself into shape, fam, and all of that, and you put on yourself a nice fitted t-shirt or whatever and go to the mall, you're well on your way.
Yeah, you know what? This is the only reason I said what I said. It wasn't to refute what you were saying, but it's to say this. Okay, there's an intrinsically valuable goal that you can have pertaining to working out, right? Which is health. Like, I mean, you're working out to work out because you're working out because you want to attain health. So that's an intrinsically valuable goal related to working out. Okay, now, I mean, of course, to me, you know, your physical appearance is an externality to being healthy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, it comes along with it. It's not the goal, but it's a side effect of health in general. Okay?
Yeah. But it's a reflection of your state of mind, and that's what I'm saying. So what happens is, whether it's the women or not, once these guys get into this lifestyle, their mindset will change also.
I hope, but this is why I said what I said, right? Because I know guys, man, like even in jail, like say for example, motherfuckers in jail, they work out, right? Healthiest guy in the goddamn world. I mean, this motherfucker's like doing pull-ups, push-ups, dips, hitting the gym religiously. Motherfuckers get back on the street. You know, they look good, they feel good, but you know how the street is. It's filled with temptations and shit. You know what I'm saying? You got fast food restaurant. Like, you can't eat fast food in jail, man. I mean, you can eat junk food in jail, but I mean, you know, guys are pretty much. Let me stop using the term jail, but say prison. Guys in prison, you know, can eat junk food, but I mean, you can also eat healthy. Motherfuckers got tuna, you know, mackerel for protein sources and shit like this, you know, and guys are pretty health conscious, but they hit the streets and then they lose it. It's like within 3 or 4 months, they're right back to living like a regular ass civilian. And the same can be said of a woman would throw you off your trajectory, dog. That's all I'm saying. Like, if you working out just for the hoes, then as soon as you get one, you're going to start working out. You know what I'm saying? And then you're going to be right back looking at yourself in the mirror like, damn, this chick ain't attracted to me no more. She give me all this static. Why? Like, you don't even look like you used to look. You let yourself go because you got into her. You know what I'm saying? That's the kind of shit I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Like, to the point where it's like, I think that, you know, like, to me, it's just an externality. It's a benefit, a fringe benefit, a side benefit of activity that you should already be engaged in for yourself. You know what I'm saying? That's just my opinion on it. Because guys that do shit for bitches, man, they lose the shit that they got. Soon as they get one. You know what I'm saying? So I myself personally, you know, like, look, don't let like you remember Grady from Sanford and Son?
Yeah.
He was in the movie, man, DC Cab. And one of the things he said to one of the cats, man, in that movie, man, don't let your dick run your life, bro. Don't let your dick run your life, bro.
You know what though? That's what I'm gonna do, man. When I come to the States to see y'all, man, I'm gonna bring out my uniform, my old medals. I'm gonna get you sucker. And be like, yo, this was for typewriting. You know what I'm saying? This was for what I got. This is for what I got that paper cut. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna hit y'all up with it. But nah, fam, but that's what I'm saying. So like when you but that's the thing, right? So when you, I mean, to your point, right? But that's the thing. And so that's the whole point. like, of the discussions that we have in the space, is to look at these concepts, a little bit deeper. And one of the things that I would encourage a lot of brothers to do in this space, people like BGS, this channel, Dr. T. Hassan Johnson's channel, you know what I'm saying, Art Nostal, you know what I'm saying, Art of Itmore, those brothers there, man, these videos are designed for you to go back and watch and learn. Like you don't, there's no way that you watch any of this stuff once and grasp it. There's no way. Like, there are still, if I could access them, there's stuff that BGS made years ago that I still watch. Or when you get into, and I know sometimes you participate, Gigi, or when you get into a Coliseum, right? Those Coliseums are like, man, sometimes 4 to 8 hours long. Right. And so, you're going through it, and you're picking out the information and everything like that and learning. And so for those of you, like even for me, for the Green Gorilla channel, guess what? I still go back and watch the video about the Combahee River Collective. And when did you make that? What, 3 years ago?
Yeah, it's been a while, bro.
Yeah, it's been a while. And so, like I said, I still, so what will happen is, you'll make new videos with new concepts, right? And I will admit it. If Sandog can admit it, anybody can admit it. And I'll be like, okay, Green Gorilla or BGS went here. Sandog ain't ready, but I know that he made a video that would help me understand this. And so I go back in time and I watch those videos. Right? You know what I'm saying? I go back in time and I watch those videos. And then after a week or so, I'll come back to what's being said. Like the other example, like BGS and Art of Itmore did this whole series on the Moynihan Report, right? So what did I have to do? I had to go back to the Black Gnostic days of when BGS was talking about culture and the Negro family and all of these things. Then I went to the Moynihan Report series. It might have been like a month later by the time I came up and I watched it, because I had to go backwards first in order to come into the present and really grasp the material. And so what I'm trying to tell you guys is that being studious and having good study habits, right, is what will make you good, not just in life, but not just in school, but in work and other areas of your life, right? And so to understand civic. So now when you talk about like your kinds of justice, right? And so for America or Black people in general or Black men, right, you would have civil justice, right? And the ultimate goal of civil justice is to enforce right. Civil justice is the way for individuals to achieve a fair solution when they have been injured or harmed due to another person's negligence, recklessness, or malpractice, right? And so at the end of the day, right, with Black people's abuses with law enforcement or and other agencies of the state, civil justice is something that, for the most part, Black people have been fighting for since they've been here, right? And so that is just an aspect, of justice. And for a lot of people, or many of us, that is the total encompassing definition of justice. When I even told you, Plato and Socrates and others were arguing and trying to figure it out in terms of what it is. Even in the Bible, right? Pontius Pilate looks at Jesus and says, "What is truth?" Right? And Jesus just kind of gives them the look like, "Hey, if you don't know by now, you will never know." Right? And so then you go into criminal justice, right? And the main object of criminal justice is to punish evildoer and to maintain peace and security in the society, right? Criminal justice aim is not only to punish the criminal, but also to reform and restore in the society. And how well is America doing that, right? So when you go back to the 94 crime bill, when crack and everything was out of control, and all of these Black leaders went to the government saying, "Look, we need help dealing with this stuff, right? So now look at civil justice and look at criminal justice, right? So I'm putting it together. Then you get to number 3, which is distributive justice, right? Which means justice to all and not a few or favorite class, right? It seeks to improve and harmonize the society with a view to avoid socioeconomic imbalances, right? Distributive justice aims to ensure the distribution of resources among all people in society, right? So now, civil justice, criminal justice, distributive justice. And if you look at African Americans, right, again, there's one more, but when you look at African Americans, we fight for each form of these justices separately, not necessarily even all together. So when I talk about what kind of agenda that we have, is it clear? Is it articulated? What is it that we want? Whereas for a lot of people, depending on where you fall in Black America, right, each of these forms of justice is the total definition of justice when it's only a portion of it, right?
So you came up with 3 ideas of justice, right? The first one is civil justice predicated upon a system of duties and rights the citizens have, right? Then you went from there to criminal justice, which is I would consider to be retributive justice, right? Yes. The justice related to retribution for punishing wrongdoers. Then you got distributive justice, which is how do you distribute benefits and resources equitably amongst citizens or based upon some principle of right, so such that the distribution can't be denied and can only be justified.
Correct. And then the last one is corrective justice, right? And this is to enforce through the court by filing a lawsuit. Corrective justice is also called remedial justice, as it is directly related to compensation. So remember, when you started to expand to the West, especially for a lot of slaves, right? Once they hit Missouri or went west, what did they do? They sued for their freedom.
Right. Yeah. I get it. Yeah. So, I mean, great, man. I'm all for it, man. I'm all for guys understanding different concepts and different approaches and different ideas related to justice. But you know what would do me some justice right now?
What?
If you motherfuckers would hit the like button, man, instead of just sitting there like an asshole. Like, I'm not gonna like the stream. Hit the like button, man. I got 60 likes, man. I got like 100 people watching, man. Can I get at least to 75, bro? Come on, man. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, all I'm saying is, look, bro, justice is important. And a lot of claims that are being made in this space are justice-related claims, but they're unclear because they're not predicated upon any abstract understanding or definition of what justice actually is. Correct. So what's the next one, bro? Let's
Okay. So now we're moving into freedom, right? So like I said, so we'll take it and we'll move into freedom in terms of, again, at the end of the day, what is it that you're looking for? So Dr. T.S.on Johnson, because this is what struck me with freedom. Dr. T.S.on Johnson, I don't know if the term existed before, but I heard it for the first time for Dr. T.S.on Johnson. And Dr. T.S.on Johnson says, flat blackness doesn't exist, right? So again, through intersectionalism, there's the women's rights, there's the LGBTQ stuff, then there's then there's black men, black handicapped people, and all of these things. And so now pretty much, our push for justice in a sense has been fractured by all of these different kind of ideological or subgroup perspectives, right? And so to get into it, freedom is understood as either having the ability to act or change without constraint or to possess the power and resources to fill one's purpose unhindered, right?
Yeah. So say that again. I want you to lay that out. But before you even do that, I want to say this. As much as I know, or as far as I know, the concept of flat blackness initially was developed by, I think, the The ADOS cats. So I forget. I can't remember their names right now, man. But the people who started the ADOS movement, you know who they are. Yvette Cornell and Tony. I forget what the guy's name. I can't remember his name, man. It's just eluding me right now. But y'all know who the ADOS people are, man. Tone Talks. Tone Talks. There it is. Antonio Moore and Yvette. Yeah, they're the ones. And the reason that they came out with this understanding of flat blackness was to talk about the difference between the situation of American blacks versus African immigrants versus Caribbean immigrants, and how they're able to actually take advantage of burdens that were borne by African Americans, but then they don't even give service to or consider themselves to be a part of that community. They almost come in as a buffer class, because a lot of these immigrants are members of the middle or upper middle classes in their respective countries anyway, and they come here and they're able to take advantage of programs that the people who actually fought for them aren't able to take advantage of. And to them, that's a miscarriage of justice. So they came up with the African descendant of slavery movement in order to deal or rectify, or to correct, if to use your terminology as you just outlined, justice, to correct, what they consider to be an injustice amongst people who happen to be visibly black. So they make a distinction. And it's not to just be divisive, but it's to say, okay, well, look, there's still people here who are descendants of American slavery who are being further disenfranchised by your participation in these programs, or your admission into colleges, or your, granting of positions in favor, but they're still not correcting or redressing the injustices that have happened in the past in America. Now, I think what Dr. Johnson does is he takes that concept and says, well, feminists are doing something similar. They just refer to a flat blackness, but I mean, they're ready to differentiate and to talk about what's different about their experiences and how things work to their detriment, or phenomena or policies or social phenomena works to their disadvantage, but they never do so for men, right? And so he brings up this idea, like, say for example, police violence. Black women will be like, well, black women, are subjected to police violence too. Well, wait a minute, miss. Not to the same degree as black men. Okay? So they, it's like when it comes to what black men go through more, they thrust themselves or shoehorn themselves into that experience, so that then they get to claim double jeopardy. So that not only do they have it bad in terms of sex, but they also have it just as bad in terms of race. So that's, I'm just trying to explain it, so that people can understand it, man, and aren't lost on it. All right.
Okay.
So, but another thing that I wanted to say about your definition of freedom is it sounds like only one idea related to freedom to me. But go ahead.
No, there are others.
Okay, yeah. Let me hear what else, the other concepts of freedom you got.
Okay, so when we talk about the other concepts of freedom, so now I'm going into a synonym, right, in a sense. So now this is freedom itself versus other philosophical applications of freedom, right? So again, so now let's go into this. So autonomy, right, is the capacity to make an informed, uncoerced decision, right? So this is a sociology type perspective. And so for me, where I give you my definition of freedom, it's in juxtaposition of, okay, now when you're approaching freedom, what do you have? Do you have free will? Is it determinism? Is it fatalism or agency? Right? And so for me, so at least for me, these, I mean, unless you have something different, this is what Sandog has identified, again, as the types of freedoms, or how people perceive freedom.
Okay, so I'm gonna put a banner up here right now. Just keep talking.
Okay, right. And so for example, now when we talk about free will, because the reason why I brought these up is that when you look at the space of the Black manosphere, right, and people want to argue liberal or conservative points of view, right, the thing is that a lot of people themselves are not conservatives, and a lot of guys who are arguing are not liberals. It's just that within certain political parties or within the American kind of media machine. So those of us on the right would believe in agency, right? That you have the power, you have the power independent of your environment or whatever institutions that affect that environment in order to make decisions of your own volition, right? And then there are others who will argue that there are degrees of determinism that happens. So again, so your ability to be quote unquote free, as I read it, is determined by your environment, the institutions, the things that are in place, right? So now, if you're born in 1820 in the state of Virginia and you happen to be black and your mother was a slave, right? Again, so now you're through the slave codes of 1705 in Virginia, right? Your status in society has already been decided for you, right?
Correct.
And
Yeah, I get this. So
yeah,
this is what I would say, right?
yes,
That much of what we consider to be freedom today is freedom of self-determination, or we call it SD. I would call it SD freedom. Okay.
okay,
I took a graduate seminar in freedom, and one of the forms of freedom that we continuously talked about was the freedom of self-determination, or negative liberty, meaning the liberty to not be interfered with, the liberty to move and to go about and to exhibit agency as you are unhindered by others in your ability to do it, right? So this kind of liberty, for the most part, is one that is extolled primarily by modern philosophers. Like, so the whole concept of the state of nature, where you're endowed with inalienable rights, right to life, liberty, and property. So to me, like a person like John Locke would be a philosopher who promotes the idea of the freedom of self-determination, right? Freedom to not be fucked with. The freedom to not be interfered with.
yes,
So now, I mean, you named several, aspects of that, but I don't think that what you did name falls outside of the boundaries of that notion of what freedom is, right? Now I will say that there is a concept of freedom that is different from the freedom of self-determination. And the only reason I have a problem with modernity in general is because I don't think they go far enough. I think this is a superficial definition of freedom. I mean, it's not. I mean, when you consider or factor in oppression and repression, namely that there is no ability for you to exercise agency or autonomy. I think, of course, that's horrible. But I mean, just the idea that you can do whatever the fuck it is that you want, and then that's the summum bonum of what freedom actually entails. I think that's misguided, right? But in America, this is the paramount form of freedom, especially for people who consider themselves to be libertarians, right? This is the highest concept of what freedom is for a libertarian. And I mean, you got conservative libertarians, you got liberal libertarians, okay? But my viewpoint on it is that it's not sufficient enough in my viewpoint in order for a person to attain virtue and achieve the good life. It's cool. I mean, to me, it's one of the preconditions for you to exercise other concepts or other ideas of freedom. But that's just my opinion, and so I'll explain why if you want me to when you complete this this section, this area.
okay, yeah. And so again, I'll go ahead and I'll be quick, right? And so when you get, so like I said, so when you get into the manosphere space, right, you have a lot of us that are arguing, that are arguing, okay, agency versus, but some of us, and I guess some of us, right, will even deem others as fatalists, right, where there's no agency at all, and God and the state completely decides everything, right? And so the way that I look at it is that, again, if you now, for example, for somebody who's born in a single parent home, the way the stats, the way the statistics play out, and what happens, sad and most unfortunately, to a lot of those young boys and girls in that circumstance, then I say that from that perspective, you can say they're in a fatalistic circumstance, right? Or a deterministic or a deterministic type circumstance. But I think the mistake that we make, amongst African Americans is that we believe, or what you want to call people a sellout, we all come from very different experiences, based upon what's expressed, right? So it's all really based upon class, I believe, a little bit more so than race in terms of how you're going to see or visualize your way out of certain circumstances regarding, our experience in America. Right. So for the most part, somebody who may have been raised in a middle class or upper middle class home, with both of their parents, again, they may look at agency, right? So they may say, I don't go outside and commit crimes or cause any trouble or anything like that. I went to school, I got a 4.0 GPA, I got accepted into Brown, and here I am working for the State Department, right? I don't, like I said, I don't know what your problem is. And then what makes the argument even worse is if you get people like Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas or guys like Ben Carson who come from real poverty, right? Who come from real poverty, because now these guys, at least in my argument, are a select few of society. Not a lot of people would have that type of constitution to go from broken homes and abject poverty to become what these men are, right? A lot of people along the way will get caught up in whatever traps that society has for them. But these guys are outliers, right? At least the sand dog. But from their perspective, they will say, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Right?
Yeah. So my thoughts about that are, I get it, but let's just be frank here, man. Not every black person is going to make it through college. Like, black men have a difficult time making it out of grade school, bro. I mean, and actually, learn what they're supposed to have learned there. Like grammar school, like reading, writing, and arithmetic, bro. No. Like basic skills. So, I mean, I understand, and also just understand this. Like Ben Carson and Clarence Thomas, man, even though they came from schools, they grew up in an era that might have been like filled with racial hostility. Like, I mean, these are baby boomers and shit. You know what I'm saying? So, early baby boomers at that. They were educated in mostly black schools where you had teachers who were actually dedicated to making sure that black kids had excellence. Not going to public schools where the primary teachers are white women and shit. Black schools run by black folks who are no nonsense about imparting education to black folks. You understand what I'm saying? So there's a difference there, man. Right? But I mean, you're right about, different people from different backgrounds and different circumstances are going to have different viewpoints about justice. And, we live in a pluralistic society, so black people are going to have, based upon geographical location, class, educational level, they're going to have different values, man. I mean, it just is what it is, and it just so happens that, black people post civil rights, the value system is going to diverge even further because they don't have segregation to tether them together anymore, although, I mean, I would argue, de jure segregation versus de facto segregation. I mean, de facto, there's still segregation out there. And I discussed it partially is based on, black people's own behaviors and habits and choices. But it's also based on white people's choices as well. So I talked about that in that book, Dark Ghettos. I'll revisit that probably either this weekend or next week. But also, this is what I want to say. So if you're kind of done with freedom, right? You're going to move into love, right?
Yeah.
So let me just say this. So in philosophy, there's the freedom, what we call self-realization, and a freedom we call self-perfection, okay? One could argue like just being able to, to exist untrammeled, like uninterfered with, that's just really just not enough, right? But like the kind of freedom that's promoted in this culture, it primarily is the freedom of self-determination, but not the freedom of self-perfection and the freedom of self-realization. Like freedom of self-perfection is the kind of, virtue that you see like in Aristotle, or even a person like Plato, like where you have to be able to control your passions and, whether they be physical urges or whether they be emotional, influences or flourishes. You have to be able to say, look, I'm angry, but I can suppress it and compartmentalize it in service of doing what I know to be what's right or what's in my best interest, right? And it takes practice. It's not something you could just do, at least for Aristotle, like virtues are things that have to be practiced and you have to be trained at an early age about what's just and what's unjust. So you have some sort of acclimation to it, just good upbringing, like how are you going to know what's right and what's wrong if your parents, don't train you to feel ashamed when you do something that's wrong? You understand what I'm saying? Right. So that's one of the things Aristotle will say. But today, freedom only consists in just being able to do what the fuck you want to do. I just don't see that as, I don't see that in and of itself as anything that's good. Like say, for example, you give me a lot of money, I win the lottery. Okay, according to the freedom of self-determination, you've upped my freedom because you've upped my ability to be able to do things that I wasn't able to do before, right? But does that necessarily mean that by winning that money, I now am more free than I would be if I was, able to control my passions? Or show restraint? I don't think so. Just being able to do whatever it is you want to do, to me, is not an indication, of freedom in its most superlative sense. That's just my opinion, okay? So, and then also, there's a freedom called the freedom of self-realization. We just throw that fucking freedom out of the window in America. So here's the freedom of self-perfection, right? Let's say, for example, let me point to somebody who's a virtuoso or something, like Michael Jordan. He's a virtuoso at basketball. One can argue that there's an amount of freedom that he's attained in virtue of being able to play basketball to the degree that he's able to do it. But I mean, we don't have to just look at it in terms of sports. We can also look at this in terms of like a job. Like say, for example, Ben Carson, as you spoke about, right? A neuroscientist. One could argue that there's a certain amount of freedom that comes to an individual from being able to exercise excellence in a domain or sphere of activity. Like, or a plumber, or like an iron worker, or a carpenter, right? Or a cook, a chef, right? They're able to display excellences in a domain of activity, and they're able to display that to others who can acknowledge and recognize them for the good that they're able to do within that domain. One can argue you really don't have freedom until you're able to exercise virtue in a sphere of activity, right? So that's another kind of freedom, right? But there's also the freedom of self-realization. And like, what do I mean by that? It means being able to realize yourself in a role, or to perceive yourself as occupying a useful position in society by, fulfilling that role. Like, for example, one could argue today, freedom is, by the average woman, is being able to do whatever the fuck it is they want to do, right? You can't tell me what to do. I'm the boss of me. I'm INDEPENDENT and all this old extra shit, right? So that's freedom to the average person, right? But one can say like, well, there's a certain amount of freedom that comes from being a mother, or realizing, your excellence, or realizing your capacities within the domain of being a mother or a wife, You get what I'm saying? Or let's say, for example, being a warrior, like as you were, right? There's a certain amount of freedom that comes with playing a critical or a pivotal role in a culture or in a society. But like Western culture at this point just says, fuck all these other forms of freedom, which are wrapped up in your identity. Like one could argue, like identity today is just a whole bunch of, like superficial bullshit. It's all based on who you can fuck, as opposed to like what role you can play. But like any dog, like any animal that's a mammal can fuck. Because we pretty much have the same kind of glands, sexual glands. And, reproductive junk. Like apes have penises, dogs have penises, right? Cats have penises and vaginas and shit like that. So, I mean, we have similar kind of nervous systems. You see what I'm saying? So, but like, how does that actually, add up to freedom? Just being able to do, some superficial physical shit the way you want. I just don't I don't perceive that as freedom in the highest sense of freedom. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get it. I do.
So that's just something else to consider, bro. So
because I've heard of these concepts. Where I got twisted was that I'm not going to say for some strange reason, but these concepts of freedom, some way, somehow, I learned them in psychology and not in philosophy.
Well, you probably would have learned them in ancient philosophy but the teacher has to actually have an orientation towards teaching you this and comparing and contrasting different eras with, one with another. Because some people, some philosophy programs don't do historical overviews and they compare and contrast different, eras with one another. Some just, and then, a lot of times when you're doing introductory work, man, you got adjuncts and people who are not even like tenured professors teaching the classes. They just getting through the grid, man. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of undergraduates are guinea pigs, bro. I'm keeping it real, man. I hate to tell you that, man, but I mean, that's just.
When I took my philosophy and my history and psychology electives, I was a guinea pig. I was
Not in every institution. It all depends on what institution it is. But a lot of times you got graduate students who don't even have PhDs yet who are teaching these courses, like teaching assistants and, shit like that, man. I mean, like I remember I went to Xavier, man. You had cats that were in graduate school, man, at Tulane, in philosophy and shit like that. They were like the ones who were teaching the courses. I mean, it's just reality, bro. But the other thing we're gonna move into is love joint. You know what I'm saying? So, I got some ideas about love as well, and I've already, explained what I think the different forms of love are. I just want to see what you got, my brother.
Yeah. So again, I mean, you've heard my forms of love, right? So, agape, love for humanity, right? Self-love, right? Pragma, love that lasts, mania, all-consuming love, eros, romantic love, one of our favorite words, philia, love between friends, right? Storge, familial love, ludus, playful love, right? And so, we'll just narrow down to agape, eros, philia, and pragma, right? And so the thing is that when we talk about love, especially in this space, right? And you talk about, red pill rage and all of these things, especially if you're pursuing relationships from a Western perspective, because you had a Nigerian guy that was on your show, right? So I also have a Nigerian wife, right? And, as you know, like you said, I have a family, right? So, I married a woman of another nationality, we have a family, we have a life that's being built together. And when I got married in Dubai courts, and me and my father-in-law, because they have it where there's a thing where me and my father-in-law kind of grasp hands together, and it was like the transference of my wife being under his authority to mine. Right.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? and my father-in-law, like me and my father-in-law, we just had a conversation today actually, and he was saying that, okay, you're not just marrying the person, right? This is about two families that are coming together. And so, for people in the West, when you're marrying just for eros, right, or just for the romantic love or the sexual attraction, right, which is what's very big with Americans, from at least what I observe on the internet. That type of love is very fleeting, right? It may last months, it may last days, months, a week, or even a few years. And for it seems that for people in the States, right, if there aren't butterflies in my stomach 5 years later, then the relationship has lost its mystique, and I need to walk away from this and find something new. And one of the reasons why a lot of people end up in red pill rage, and everything else is, you're not understanding the other forms of love. And when you understand the other forms of love, especially in relationship to yourself, which is self-love, then you could kind of govern yourself, or govern the boundaries, that you need to that you need to follow. Because I doubt, outside of Sandog, many people here have been on dates where when you go on a date, it ain't just you and the girl, but it's also her brothers and cousins, right, and any other male relatives. So you and the girl might get some privacy, right, or whatever, but her brothers and them are on the other side of that restaurant. And when you walk out of that restaurant, she's going home with her family, and you going home by yourself, right? So I think that, in the Western world, at least from what it seems on television and everything else, so much stock is put into the sexual aspect of love, and the sexual aspect, or what you would call in a sense the superficial forms of love. So even here, right? So some of my friends from certain cultures, if you talk to them, if you say I'm married, they'll say, okay, so what do you have? Do you have a love marriage, or do you have an arranged marriage? And that's how they mention the two, actually, right? So is your marriage love, or is it arranged? And so, and BGS once made a statement, right? If you have a woman in your life, you have to have something for her to do, right? So if you just want to be in love like Looney Tune cartoons with the angel wings flying off and everything else, that is not something for that woman to do. Your family, because remember, right, it's about bringing families, businesses together, procreating, having children, and everything else. So at the end of the day, as a man, if you do get married, you have to have some kind of program, or some kind of outlook, or some kind of end goal for you and that family. Just besides, we fell in love, and we like falling asleep next to each other at night, right? So
Yeah,
that
yeah.
yeah, so there has to be, so again, so there has to be more to it. And so as you're going through that process, so now you're talking about like agape, love for humanity, right? So now, like, even for me, I now have like this massive family of people from different nationalities, cultural backgrounds, and everything else. And this type of love is also not only a part of my family intimately, but a part, like I said, a part of my daily life. And the crazy part is that your marriage could be based on these other forms of love. So even in Islam, it says you can marry for many things. You can marry for wealth, right? You can marry for beauty, right? You can marry for beauty, but the best thing that you can marry for is the value system, right? So at the end of the day, like, people say men and women can't be friends, but men and women who do develop that form of love, or that friendship from philia, that also could that also could support and lead to marriage if that's what you're into. And actually the other parts of love, in a sense, if that's what you're looking for. But at least for me, it appears that a lot of guys are here really, right, to kind of clap cheeks, right? And so if you're here to clap cheeks, then you're at eros. But for the other forms of love, these things also play, they'll also play a part of your romantic life. And this is where the longevity comes from, right? So love, again, love between friends, familial love, playful love, self-love. And actually, that one is the most important, like first and foremost. And so again, at least from what it seems, a lot of people look at love as this external thing, right? So you're taught that, you're going to meet this other person and that other person is going to fill you up and bring you joy, right? And so at the end of the day, if that's what you're doing, at least from Sandal's perspective, you're setting yourself up. You're setting yourself up for failure if you think that somebody else is going to come into your life and fill you up like a cup, and and make you happy, and you just run off into the sunset, right?
I do blame the Saracens for part of this shit. You know what I'm saying? Because they created this whole narrative of romance and shit. We talk about the Muslims. They're the first romantics. You know what I'm saying? I will say this though. Okay, so haven't heard that. I like to, my background is philosophy, so, I refer to Aristotle as it pertains to love in this regard, or friendship, because he says there's really actually three types of friendship. A marriage, to a certain extent, is going to have to be based upon some kind of friendship, right?
Yeah.
Or it ought to be. Again, I'm using the word that, probably shouldn't be there, but, ought, right? So there's pleasure-based relationships or friendships. There's utility-based friendships. And then there's, friendships in which you actualize yourself along with the other individual, right? And I think it should go without saying that human beings are social animals. Like, no human being can exist without the others. You can't even have a concept about yourself or of yourself without being related to other people. Human beings are social animals. Without sociality, we die. Or life is not worth living. Like, if you were marooned on an island by yourself, how long would you survive or maintain the will to survive? You get what I'm saying? I mean, it is a law of self-preservation in the species, but part of, being alive means that you get to experience the world with other people. You know what I mean? So we're not reptiles. We weren't born by ourselves. And we're able to, as soon as we was, sprung forth from our mother's loins, we're just out here ready to go. We got everything we need. Now we need nurturance and love and tutelage and kindness. We feed off of that in order to move forward through life, man. It's a fact, okay? Most mammals are like this, right? So he says that when it comes to pleasure-based relationships or friendships, those are easily dissolved. As soon as there's a problem, there's no more pleasure, then the relationship pretty much is over with, because all it was based on pleasure to begin with. Okay. He says that if the relationship is based purely on utility, it's just based upon like, well, what can you do for me? What can I do for you? As soon as you're not able to do something for this individual anymore, the relationship dissolves. It's like, okay, well, it was cool to know you, bro, but, just imagine being with the bros and then, you lose your job and then that motherfucker like, well, you used to be the set out, but, you can't set it out no more then. Shit, I'll holler at you, dog. You know what I'm saying? Like, or like, let's say, for example, this is why there are conditions even built into marriage, like, well, at least morally, for better or for worse, for sick, or in health, for better or for worse. I mean, because the idea is that this is not a utility-based relationship, or it should not be. You know what I'm saying? And it's not just a pleasure-based relationship either. You know what I'm saying? In happiness and in sorrow. You know what I'm saying? You're supposed to be able to maintain the relationship. So at any rate, then the last friendship is one where you're actualized through the bond through the other individual. And this is actually what our fraternity is based on, right? The idea that friendship is essential to the soul, man.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, okay, it's the reason we say through days of joy and years of pain. Because, I mean, you're going to have joys, you're going to have pain, you're going to have ups, you're going to have downs. You got to be your brother's keeper, you know, all throughout. Now, of course, this is all ideal, and you can't be everybody's friend in the fraternity. There's too many guys. You get what I'm saying? So it's impossible to be a true friend to everyone that you encounter within any organization. But, I mean, the point is that you're supposed to have a group of friends that where you see them doing well, you're happy about it. You understand what I'm saying? So, like, if you know, a telltale sign that you're not fucking with a friend is like if you get a promotion or something good happens to you and then that friend gets jealous of you, you know that's not really your friend.
Yes.
Because if that was really your friend, they wouldn't be upset that you're doing well. They would be proud and happy that you're doing well because they would actually play a part in your success to begin with. They would be a reason developmentally for which you were able to attain the success that you actually attained. I mean, barring luck or some shit like that. But let's say, for example, I'm a high school homie, and just for the sake of argument, Kobe Bryant is my nigga. You know what I'm saying? And I spent time with him. You know what I'm saying? Like we just chilled. We played video games together. We played hoops, but I wasn't as good as he was. But I still, you know, that's my homie and shit. Or like, you know how LeBron got his entourage of 5 or 6 guys that he fucks with even though they don't play basketball, but they've been his friends forever type shit. Right. Or even like with somebody like, who's a little short guy that does comedy, man?
Kevin Hart?
Yeah, Kevin Hart. Guys that he's cool with, you know, like, it can be kind of draining to see one of your clique just be the only motherfucker who's got or commands attention or whatever, but you're proud of your homies when they do well and when they're doing well. And you feel bad when they're doing bad.
Correct.
That's true friendship. So if you with a chick, I've seen women, man, be upset that, you know, you're doing good and shit. Like, I could never get that. Like, you're supposed to be my lady. How the fuck can you be upset that I'm doing well? I never understood it, bro. I don't even know how to process that. Like, you're supposed to be on the same team. That's like being, you know, like on the same squad, and that motherfucker scored a bucket, and you mad that he scored a bucket. Like, huh? It's just
because when people, you're comfortable seeing people at a certain level, right? So when people begin to surpass you or whatever, right there comes that change, right? And with that change is grief or jealousy, you know, say, and the things that, you know, say, and the things that come with it. So there comes that, okay, you know, I want you to do well. I'm proud of you, but it's simultaneously the person that you're leaving behind has the inability to change, which is why you're leaving them behind.
Yeah, but you know, my viewpoint on it is, though, you know, all of this is just to say, though, you know, friendship, if it's real, if it's really real, it's not, or if love is real, it's not just based on pleasure and it's not just based on utility. There's something deeper there. Can't just be that, you know, like, okay, I'm marrying this chick because her family got money. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can use this bitch. And unfortunately, too many times is what I hear women doing the exact same thing. Just imagine if men were doing that. Like, I gotta have a chick with money. Why? Because if she ain't got money, she ain't gonna be able to give me the type of shit I want.
Yeah, well, that day is coming, right? Again, right? It's an egalitarian society, because one of the things that I wanted to bring up about love, right? Because it's one thing to talk about the women, right? And, you know, and I know, like, in the space, people make fun of Black girls rock or Black girl magic. But one of the things that I do like is the fact that, at least to the best of their ability, Black women like each other and don't kill each other. right? And so for us, we have to find a way to start loving the man in the mirror and then our fellow man that we see in the street.
Yeah, I
Right?
get that. So it starts with self-love, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It
And so
starts with respect for yourself and understanding that that there's something within you. I really want to show you something if I can that kind of expresses this. Let me see if I can find this, man. And one of the guys that I like a lot, man, is a guy named Joseph Campbell. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
oh yeah, of course, man. What's called
Yeah.
the hero's journey? Of course, man.
Yeah, I rocks with Joe, man.
I'm looking at his books right now, the hero's journey, the mythology. I have all of his stuff.
Yeah, I rocks with Joe, man. So let me. I'm gonna make the screen bigger so
The
all
man
of
of
this
a thousand faces.
Yeah, man. Hey, bro. I was in the Campbell, man, like maybe about 20 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So, but anyway, man, check it out. Okay, so it's a little long winded, but it's only 3 minutes and 47 seconds. I think we can bear with that. So, tell me if you hear it.
That's right. That occurs
Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay.
without regard to the nobility or the notoriety that you attract for it.
That's right.
And the mother does it by the isolation she endures in behalf of the family. Of the raising.
Motherhood is a sacrifice. On our veranda in Hawaii, there are little birds that come that Jean likes to feed, and each year there have been one or two mother birds. And if you've ever seen a mother bird plagued by her progeny for food, that the mother should regurgitate their meal to them, and the two of them, or five of them in one case, flopping all over this poor little mother, they bigger than she in some cases, you just think, well, this is the symbol of motherhood. This is just giving of your substance and everything to this progeny. This should be it in marriage. A marriage is a relationship. When you make a sacrifice in marriage, you're not sacrificing to the other, you're sacrificing to the relationship. And this is symbolized, for example, in that Chinese image of the Dai Chi, the Tao, with the dark and the light interacting. It's a well-known sign. That is the relationship of yang and yin, male and female, which is what a marriage is. And that's what you are. You're no longer this, you're the relationship. And so marriage, I would say, is not a love affair, it's an ordeal. And
An ordeal?
The ordeal is sacrifice of ego to the relationship of the two-ness, which now becomes the one.
One not only biologically, but spiritually, and primarily spiritually.
Primarily spiritually.
But the necessary function of marriage in order to create our own images and perpetuate ourselves and children. But it's not the primary one, as you say.
That's really just the elementary aspect of marriage. There are two completely different stages of marriage. First is the youthful marriage, following the wonderful impulse, that nature has given us in the interplay of the sexes biologically, and in then the reproduction of children. But there comes a time when the child graduates from the family, and the family is left. I've been amazed at the number of my friends who in their 40s or 50s go apart, who have had a perfectly decent life together with the child, but they interpreted their union in terms of relationship through the child. They did not interpret it in terms of their own personal relationship to each other.
Utterly incompatible with the idea of doing one's own thing.
It's not one's own thing, you see. It is, in a sense, one's own thing, but the one isn't just you, it's the two together. And that's a purely mythological image of the sacrifice of the visible entity for a transcendent unit, cracking eggs to make an omelet, And by marrying the right person, we reconstruct the image of the incarnate God. And that's what marriage is.
The right person. How does one choose the right person?
Your heart tells you it ought to.
Your inner being.
That's the mystery.
You recognize your other self.
Well, I don't know, but there's a flash that comes and something in you knows that this is the one.
Well, anyway,
So do you see it more of a trend where people are leaving their
doesn't
jobs?
exist anymore, man. Precisely because, in my viewpoint, it's just like, especially in a culture like America, man, it's all about the self.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying? It's not just, it's one thing to love yourself, to have a healthy love of self, and it's another thing to be selfish.
Yes.
And, and as it pertains to like a union between a man and a woman, if there's no selflessness in it, and I'm just saying, how these things are arranged, like, well, I'm the prize and all this shit, and, you got to be able to provide and protect for me, and you got to be able to do X, Y, and Z for me. That just doesn't sound like a reciprocal relationship that's going to be healthy in the long run anyway. What's the point of it? You know what I'm saying? Like, the whole concept of happy life, happy wife, that's some bullshit to me, bro. I'm just keeping it a buck, you know what I'm saying? So, but this is what, like you said, it's about, it's the two becoming one. It's the yin, the yang. It's the principle of convergence of elements in the universe. You know what I'm saying? Like it's supposed to be, but in this culture, it's very difficult to attain because the culture in and of itself is predicated upon the modern ideal of everybody being in a state of protection one from the other. You know what I'm saying? So like the myth to me starts off in the whole idea of the state of nature where, everybody's at odds with everybody else. It's like a state of war, especially as Hobbes presents it, or even, like Locke presents it. It's a situation in which men live where there's open hostilities, and the only reason men come together is because of utility. If it weren't for the fact that there was utility to be gained from men coming together and giving over a portion of the rights to the state, they would just prefer to live in a state of nature. So, I just, and I've already explained it. I call modern metaphysics like a metaphysics of individuated ontology. I know that's kind of abstract, but the idea is that human beings exist as monads, like separate entities with their own inviolability apart from others. And like, nobody can demand anything from you at all. You're windowless. But I mean, to me, that just belies nature. Everything is associated with everything else. Now I'm being kind of esoteric and Gnostic in how I'm speaking about it, but, I'll explain it at some other time in greater length. But that's just how I think about, the whole concept of love. It's like, it's deeper than just utility, and it's deeper than just pleasure. And unfortunately, too many people in the United States and in the Western world in general, I mean, the whole culture is predicated on conspicuous consumption and feel-good shit that leaves you hollow and empty, even after you've consumed it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's only so many vacations. There's only so many, restaurants. There's only so many articles of clothing. There's only so many gadgets and so many material objects that you can, dive into to be satisfied until you actually have to dive into yourself. Correct. And become happy. You know what I mean? And that's the real self-love, not selfishness, but that's where the real self-love, the authentic self-love comes from, in my opinion. But,
Yes. Because one of the things that I will tell a lot of men in this space, right? And I don't bring this up. So in all of this debate about high value man and all of this stuff, let me tell you something, right? So Sandog has made six-figure money, right? High six-figure money. And everything has a cost. Man, look, when you open up a finance book, right, the first thing you're going to get in chapter 1 is you're going to learn about the time value of money, right? And the key word being time, right? So I've been making six-figure money, since I was 25. But guess what, man? I didn't have a life. So what people don't understand is that there's a payoff to this stuff, man. I didn't have a life. There was no such thing for me as being off of work. Or if a client called me at 3 o'clock in the morning, I say, we're closed. It didn't exist. right? So when
Right.
so the most valuable thing that you have in your life is relationships, right? So like, when I visited the States, man, I went to go visit, the gravesite of one of my line brothers that passed away, and I'm visiting and I'm meeting his eldest son for the first time in his life, right? You know what I'm saying? And if you get what I'm trying to say, so when you're out here making money or making the big bucks and all of this stuff, it's a cost. So for the people who are near and dear to me, I have been missing from their lives for more than a decade.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so at the end of the day, so again, so you guys have to remember, man, not all that glitters is gold. So fortunately for me, right, I was able to take a break, right? If I didn't take a break, my daughter is 2. With the lifestyle that I had before I had her, she wouldn't even know me.
Right.
She
Yeah,
wouldn't.
I get it, bro. Like, I mean, here's the deal, right? I've said it before myself, like, and I'm going to echo what you just said. Your time and the relationships that you have are the most valuable things. But that's the reason I sent you that video with Heidegger and the being in the world
Yes.
section about the history of being. Now, according to Heidegger, at the current moment, we're in what's called the technological mode of being. And there's a sacrifice that you pay for being in this mode of being. Like everything in the technological mode of being is about innovation, productivity, efficiency, but that has a cost, because what it does is it takes time and it levels it. So, I mean, when you talk about time, in the past, there used to be times that were qualitatively different than other ideas of time or other, understandings of time. Like, if you think that time is all equal and they can be broken down into minutes, seconds, hours, whatever, and every time is qualitatively the same as every other time, then there's something that you miss. So like 3 a.m. is not a time when you should be resting. It's the time just like any other time where you have to be efficient and productive. Right?
Right.
And like one could argue, like when we were younger, I don't know, but like when I was young, there used to be different times. Like Sunday was a different time. Like I'm 50, so I'm 51 actually, but like when I was young, the department stores on Sunday were closed. The liquor stores were closed. It was like a quietness on Sunday. Now, I mean, of course it's a convention for things to shut down on Sunday. I mean, you had gas stations and stuff like that. There were, not all of them were open, but some of them were open, right? But I mean, things shut down, right? I remember even on a weekday, like after 12 o'clock on a weekday, the television was shut off.
Correct.
Like that, I mean, you see the lines, the color lines come up on it, and then you hear a tone, and then the next thing you know, you see static on the television. It's like there's nothing on. It's time to go to bed. But today, under the technological mode of being, and people were arguing and lamenting about this even before the advent of like the cell phone, where you could be contacted anywhere at any time. At least when you got in your car, like 25 to 30 years ago, nobody could call you while you're in the car. Now, like, motherfuckers can reach you anywhere. Everything is about being able to get into contact with you and force you into productivity at every given moment. And there's a price to pay for that, bro. Man, go watch that entire documentary, man. It's a dope documentary because what it does is,
I'm telling you guys right now, man, I am the ghost of Make Money Future. right? And like I said, it's very rare that I come up here and talk salaries and and you know what I'm saying, or money and all of this stuff, right? But again, when you're looking at fast moving, so example, so I deal with fast moving goods and cargo, right? So fast moving goods and cargo is everything that's in your drugstore and everything that's in your grocery store, right? So and then so again, that's constant, right? Because remember, your food, the drugs, all of those things have a shelf life. Then you have high seasons, like high order seasons like Christmas or flu season, Thanksgiving, Eid, Ramadan, Diwali, or whatever you're living, right? And so this is what I'm trying to say. Again, I deal in the distribution of energy, right? Fuel. So I move things like jet fuel and diesel, etc. So a lot of this stuff, man, like I said, is countless. Like I said, it's countless hours, man. So I've had it, man. Jobs where I work 6-7 days a week plus 60% travel.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So fam, it was, it was, and again, and thank God I had the opportunity to do a lot of it, when I was younger, right? When it was, again, when it was more and more fun, right? And so, I had that opportunity to do it, but I'm telling you guys, man, you pay, you pay a, you pay a cost, and I can't thank God enough that my parents are still alive, that my siblings are still alive, despite all the amount of time that I missed, right? Trying to climb that hill to be trying to climb that hill, to the top of Jacob's ladder.
Bro,
So,
look, I ain't gonna say, I've been making like high 6-figure salaries all my life since 25, but
yeah,
man, all I can tell you is, man, look, I've had days, even like, because I used to be a construction worker and shit, right? I've
that's
had
great
days, man,
money.
where I work 12 hours out of a day, right?
That's great money.
And, I was making at least $35 an hour. And, $6 going to your pension fund and your benefits fund and shit like that, your IRA and all of this. So, I'm like, okay, every week you get paid. I think you get paid on every Thursday or some shit like that. So you get your check, that motherfucker down there 3 G's because you're working overtime. You know what I'm saying? And that's after taxes. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, but damn, dude, as soon as you get home, you're exhausted. You've been working 12 hours, man. Hard physical labor, 12 hours. 6 days, even sometimes 7 days out of the week, dog. 7 days, bro. You imagine working 12-hour days, 7 days a week?
Yeah.
In construction, bro, you'll be away from the job. You might be an hour and a half away from the job. So you got to drive an hour and a half to get to the job. So that's 2 more hours, 3 hours gone. So all you're doing is sleeping, eating, and getting back up and going back to the same shit, bro. And you're like, damn, man, like I can't keep doing this. Yeah, I mean, I'm on pace to make 150, 200 G's, but god damn, man, like I'm killing myself. You know what I mean? And then, you got family, your significant others and shit like that are like, you're never here. They out kicking it and shit. You like, damn. You know what I mean? It's like, god damn. Like, when am I ever going to get a break?
Here I am, correct. Here I am fucking stuck between the computer or standing on a port somewhere because somebody screwed up the paperwork and the check digit on the container doesn't match the check digit on the report. And so now you're up in customs on the weekend on both knees begging them, right? You know what I'm saying? Begging them, right, to help you clear your cargo so you can move, so you can deliver it to the end user, man. So that's what I'm saying, man. Like, there's, man, there's just so much behind the scenes, man, in terms of how the world works, how people think, what drives their philosophies, and and everything else, and the whole intent of this, because it's almost time for me to pray now, and I'll go. But the whole intent for this show was, as we evolve or move into whatever Manosphere 3.0 is going to be, right? I'm talking about, the fact that we have to start looking at things through very different lenses than what we did in the past. And you need to understand your concept of justice versus other people's concept of justice versus what the law of the land say that justice is and how it's interpreted, right? And how that's going to be interpreted is based upon who's represented in whatever institution you'll say at any given time. And so, like I said, we're going to have to learn how to, one, understand these concepts, and then also, two, understand other concepts that come out of organizational behavior and theory, right? Where you get to learn how people function in large groups or within institutions, and in that way you could plan and you could move. Like I said, you know what I'm saying, you could move accordingly, because at the end of the day, right, what's killing you in the civil rights game is just other special interest groups, right? And so you can't pour old wine into new skins, right? So we have to let go of a lot of the tactics that we did before, and you also have to remember the fact that you live in the United States, and like I said, you have to understand different walks of life, different ideas that people have, and what do those ideas mean in relationship to you.
Yeah,
right?
I was talking to so there's this idea, this one brother, man, I think his name is PK. And he I think a joint is just like an icon and shit, PK Angel, I think is his name. And, we were kind of going back and forth because he kind of disagrees with the idea that, we need to start treating women, as equals. Primarily because, it's not going to actually work. This doesn't really work in other portions of the world. And so it's a deviation from a traditional form of life that actually had positive consequences and so on and so forth. And, my whole thing is this. Like, first of all, when you start talking about nature, the one thing I want people to understand about nature, just from a metaphysical or ontological perspective, man, nature is dynamic, bruh. Nature is not static, man. The universe in and of itself is dynamic. It is not static. This is why although I like ancient philosophers, man, like Plato, a person like Plato, to me, even though his philosophy is beautiful, I mean, the political and ethical philosophy is beautiful, it just doesn't vibe with me because, I think he gets metaphysics wrong. Like, there's nothing eternal, bro, about the environment, man. Like, everything is in flux. Everything is moving and changing. Nature is moving and changing. The universe is moving and changing. It's like Heraclitus said, you can never step in the same river twice. So, like, the game of life is moving, and you got to be able to adapt. You have to be able to improvise.
Yes.
And what we want to do is we want to be able to call back or harken back to a time of yore. Like, bro, that time is gone. It's elapsed. You can't go back in time, bro. Like, I understand the desire to preserve what was lost, but let's be frank about it. We never lost it. We never even experienced it. So we have to, right now, what we have to do is we have to play the game that we're playing. It's like, say for example, I'm on a basketball squad and we're in a game. I can't say, like, I want the game to be the way it was in the first period when we were scoring really easily.
Correct.
You can't, like, you can't unilaterally decide that, okay, it was better then in the first period, so I don't want to play the third period now, because the strategy of the team that you're playing against has changed. Like, it's like you don't get the ability to do that. I mean, the only thing you can do is to play the hand you're dealt. That's it, and it might be a shitty hand, but you have to play it nonetheless. That's just a reality of life and nature. Okay, there's nothing you can do about it. But the question is, like, okay, are you actually willing to readjust your strategy in real time to play the game that you have to play? Will you rise to the occasion, or will you, this is what the hero's journey actually is all about. If you like read the literature based upon like the hero you know, the hero's journey, you know, the man with a what they call it, 1,000 faces, something. I can't remember what the name of it is. But the whole idea is you got a hero who basically doesn't even want to he doesn't want to be a hero, but he's called upon to do something great, and he resists against it at first, but eventually he capitulates to what he has to do. And a lot of people think that this is, you know, some political shit. Actually, it's a generative, ontological thing. It's a mystical, ontological truth that's being exposed in terms of the hero's journey. Namely that new creations come into the world, exist, and they change the paradigm. They have to. And old motherfuckers get mad and they're the wicked witches or the evil wizards or the dragon, you know, whatever the case may be. But the reality is things that exist have to make way for new carnations to probe into the world and to come in and to do their own thing in their own unique way. That's how life is. It's that way for every living sentient being. Even plant life is like that. So, but dog, go ahead and do what you got to do, man. I'll holler at you, bro. Sand dog, you there? Sand dog done fell asleep on me, man.
Sand dog is here. Yo, the thing is, whatchamacallit, it's
Sand dog, man, you got to give it up, dog. You fell out on me, dog. I know it's like, what time is it where you at?
5:31.
In the morning?
Yeah.
Man, get your ass to bed, man.
No, it's prayer time now. But no, man. But no, seriously, I am, like I said, I'm hearing you out, man. And we're saying the same thing, man. And as we're moving towards, and you correct me if I'm making the wrong labeling or naming for this, but as we're moving towards establishing our agenda, it's very important that we learn the names and definitions in the different categories of the things that we talk about in this space, right? Which is why BGS brought us people like you, right, to help us put together the vocabulary and to, like I said, and to build on it, man. And so I think hopefully if people were to kind of follow this video, right, in the space, you'll start, we might be able to do things like actually listen to each other and even develop, you know, levels of love and appreciation and trust amongst each other, right? That ability to respect each other and work together, right? And so again, we live in a world where multiple answers could be correct at the same time, right? As long as those answers are coordinated, right? So at the end of the day, if W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, and Marcus Garvey somehow were able to work together despite their perspectives, or if Martin Luther King and Malcolm X were able to work together despite their perspectives, a lot more ground could have been, a lot of ground could have been covered.
But dog, get you some rest, man. I'll holler at you on the next one, dog. But I appreciate you for coming, man, and blessing us, you know, with your ideas and your views, man. You know, tomorrow, I don't know what it is I'm gonna do, man. I'll probably be on some old low vibrational bullshit, but you know, or maybe not. It all depends on what I do, man. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but you know, I appreciate your presence, man, and coming through and blessing us, dog.
Yeah, dog.
No, so get you some. Well, you got to pray now, but
yeah,
get your prayer on, man, and then you know get your rest on if you got some time to do it. You gotta go to work real soon.
Yeah, man. I go in like 2 hours.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, get your rest in, man. Get your rest in, bro.
All
right, dog. Real.
Dog.
So look, y'all, man. Appreciate my man Bruce On Wayne, appreciate that, brother, man. Thank you for the donation, man. Pass the plate. The BGS tax is in effect. I'm tired of my damn self. It's been a long day, bro. Shout out to the brother who hit me up on the Cash App, man. What is his name, man? Troy. Appreciate you, sir. And we'll be here tomorrow, man. You know, I'll probably end up doing some more ghetto shit tomorrow, man. Talking about the ghetto. Especially the issue about culture. A lot of people have things to say about culture and all of this, man. My thing is, how can you change culture? And what can you do? What's right or what's wrong? What's just or unjust about making an attempt to change a culture to begin with? So, having said that, man, y'all be good, man. I'll holler at y'all on the next one, bro. Peace.